Right, let's expand the conversation and bring in Nkululeko Tselane, who's the legal director at the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. The public has been urged to add their voice and participate in this process. Why is that important?
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Well, it's very important that the public gives some input, because ultimately the public are the ones who are going to have to deal with the electoral system that we end up with. Now, that's particularly important as you'll remember in these recent elections in May, there was a lot of public confusion around the Electoral Amendment Act and changes to the manner in which the elections were conducted on really an administrative level. So it's very important that the public give input as to things that they like, things that they don't like, and ways in which they feel as though that there can be more accountability and representation in the various legislatures and executives.
It's good that you mention accountability, because we know that while the system in its current form has brought some stability, it has shown to have its limitations, especially when it comes to citizen engagement and that element of accountability. And as we review and really take a look at what changes need to be implemented, what stands out for you as you look at our current system and the windows of opportunity?
Well, first of all, we must accept that there will never be a perfect electoral system, and electoral systems are very much dictated by the context of a particular country. So, as much as we can look at the various international examples, I know in the discussion paper they look at Netherlands, which is a very prevalent example. I think what really stands out is continuing on this discussions that have been related to, of course, coalition government and the way they're formed, because coalition governments are a natural result of proportional representative systems. Now, many people were not expecting that, obviously, because we have been used to a single party dominance in the most part. Now, there's lots of proposals that we could perhaps look at when it comes to electoral reform. One of the other controversial ones is introducing electoral thresholds, to say, so perhaps a political party or an independent candidate needs to get a particular amount of votes or percentage of votes before they can even be considered. So that's one of the key takeaways. But what we also need to remember is that we're still in the consultative phase. So as much as there are many views, as was correctly pointed out in the introduction to the conversation, they have received 350 submissions. However, we don't see those 350 submissions. We really see a synopsis. So this is an ongoing discussion about what type of electoral system we want to see as South Africans.
What about the opportunity to strengthen democratic oversight through accountability? How can that be maximized as these discussions will be taking place?
A lot of disgruntlement from the electorate has come from the fact that, I mean, number one, people feel as though their vote doesn't matter. Number two, people feel as though there's very little accountability once elected representatives enter office. So one of the ways in perhaps trying to strengthen that democratic accountability is the constituency system. Now, we already have a constituency system to a large degree, but it's mainly in terms of the regional vote and the national vote, which we saw more obviously in these last previous elections. But up until now, it's mainly been a administrative calculation for the IEC, but now it's actually becoming a more direct interaction with the electorate. Now, if we're looking at constituencies, that would mean that I know exactly who is my direct representative. Now, we already have that, as I said before that. We already have constituencies, but most voters don't know that. And when parliamentarians are doing constituency work, most voters don't even know what that means. Now, what we could find is that now we're going to have a system where voters have a lot more direct interaction with their elected representatives, and are able to then therefore hold them accountable. Whether that means we're looking at a party system or a more open party system, or we're looking at independent candidates. And maybe just to round off on that point, what you'll also know from you'll notice from our electoral system that it's really tailored towards political parties. As much as we've now, after the amendment, have allowed the provision of independent candidates, they find themselves at a very large disadvantage. And most politicians with high profiles have found it more feasible and more practical to go the political party route, just because of the way our electoral system is structured.
What about the aspect of having a system that will now restore trust in the democratic process by making MPs directly accountable to the very communities that they serve?
Look, we need to be careful. It's difficult to really legislate political behavior and political culture. So as much as we can change the law, we can make various amendments. What we have to remember is that at the end of the day, political culture, especially the political culture that has persisted since our democracy, if there isn't a fundamental change in that accountability won't be found. So we could find ourselves in an endless cycle of electoral reform. Personally, I'm perhaps a more conservative constitutional lawyer in that I don't think we really need that many amendments. I think, however, we do need a very deliberate and very focused change of the political culture in the country.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in on the discussion. Let's leave our conversation there as, of course, we round that up with Nkululeko Tselane, who's the legal director at the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa.